This is the Introduction to Conic Sections video. A conic section is formed by the intersection of a plane and a right circular cone. The angle of the plane creates the type of conic section. So we're going to label the conic sections below. The first one is a circle. The second one we call an ellipse. The third one is a parabola. And then the last one with two cones stacked on top of each other, we call that a hyperbola. We're going to talk a little bit about circles. So the standard form of the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where hk is the center and r is your radius of your circle. So given that we have a center and a radius here, we're going to write this in standard form. So this is h and this is k and this is r. So I'm going to have x plus 4, or minus a negative 4, which does become plus, squared, plus y minus 6 squared equals 4 squared, which is 16. And then the next one, hk. So it would be y, x. Don't know where y came from. X minus 1 squared plus y plus 5 squared equals 10, because when you square the square root goes away. So if I'm given a graph here, the center is going to be this point right here, which is -3, -4. And my radius is how far it takes me to the edge, which is 2. So if I wanted to write that as in standard form, I would say x plus 3 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 2 squared, which is 4. And if I'm given a center and an endpoint, I'm going to have to use some information. If you remember from geometry, way back in the day, the distance is equal to x minus x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And it's all under the square root. And your midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 over 2, and then y1 plus y2 over 2, and that'll give you an ordered pair. That'll give you the middle of 2 points. So if I'm given the center and an endpoint, I'm going to have to use, so I want to figure out what the radius is. So I want to figure out this distance right here. I want to figure out r. So r is equal to the square root of -2 plus 4 squared plus 6 minus 12 squared. So I get the square root of 2 squared plus -6 squared. 2 squared is 4. 6 squared is 36. And I'm taking the square root. The square root of 40. So I'm going to have x plus 2 squared plus y minus 6 squared equals 40. If I want to do another one of these, I'm going to say the radius equals the square root of 0 minus 7 squared plus 4 plus 2 squared. So I get the square root of -7 squared plus 6 squared. So I get 49 plus 36 which is the square root of 85. When I plug these in, I'm gonna, since my x coordinate, my h is 0, I'm gonna have x squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 85. Apparently I'm having a difficult time writing today. That's how you would put that in standard form. Now if I give you the endpoints of the diameter, I'm going to have to do a couple things here. So I'm going to want to find the center, which will be the midpoint between the 2 points on the end. So we're going to have to use the midpoint formula. This thing is going to give me the diameter when I find the distance between those 2 points. So I'm going to have to divide it by 2 to get the radius, because the diameter equals 2 times the radius. And so when I do this, let's find the distance or the diameter first. So I'm going to have -1 minus 5 squared plus 8 minus 6 squared, all under the square root. So I'm going to be left with 36 plus 4, which is the square root of 40, which I can't just leave this time. I actually do need to simplify it, and it simplifies into 2 square roots of 10, because 40 breaks into 4 and 10. And if I want to find the radius, because that's my diameter, I'm going to divide it by 2. So I'm going to get r equals the square root of 10. So that's my radius. So now we need to find the midpoint. So if I want to find the midpoint, I'm going to take -1 plus 5 over 2 and 8 plus 6 over 2. And that's going to give me 2, 7 as my midpoint. So that's going to be h and k, because that's my center. So my standard form equation of this circle is x minus 2 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals 10. Because remember, when you're finding the radius, you square it. Let's do one more. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to find the distance, or the length of diameter between these 2 points. So I'm going to have -4 minus 2 squared plus 10 minus 4 squared, which gives me 36 plus 36 equals the square root of 72, which simplifies into 9 and 8, and 8 breaks into 4 and 2. So that gives me 6 square roots of 2. So that's the diameter, so I need to divide by 2, which gives me 3 square roots of 2 as my radius. And then to find the midpoint, I'm going to take -4 plus 2 and divide by 2, and then I'm going to take 10 plus 4 and divide by 2, and I'll get -1, 7. So that's also h and k, because that's now my center. So if I plug this into standard form, I get x plus 1 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals 18. Because when you square 3 square roots of 2, you square the 3 squared, you square the 3, and then square root of 2 becomes 2, so we get 9 times 2, which is 18. So that is your brief introduction to circles and conic sections.